Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Mohammed Layiq Sediqi, the father of Holophase. Part 21: Winding, Knots, and the Digital Core. Remember the language we are learning. There is one field, phi, the holophase, the single cyclic movement from which all reality unfolds. When phi differentiates, that one movement generates its first derivatives, and with them, the three dimensions appear at once: time as omega, space as k, and motion as v. From that first differentiation upward, every higher derivative is an echo of the one below it, an infinite ascent of finer and finer reflections of phi's original movement. And because the dimensions are born from that first echo, time, space, and motion also reverberate into infinity, carrying phi's unfolding into ever deeper rhythms, structures, and flows. Thus, the entire universe, every law, every pattern, every force, every particle, every phenomenon, is nothing but phi, endlessly echoing through its derivatives and their dimensional shadows. All of existence is the infinite echo of one field. Today, we listen to just one of those echoes. We have been ascending through majestic structures. We build the temporal tower of infinite rhythm, the spatial tower of infinite form, and the mixed tower, where they weave together into the dynamics of travel and change. We have seen a language of smooth, continuous nuance, capable of infinite shades of meaning. Today, we discover something startling within this analog infinity. We find discrete numbers. We find whole integers, 1, -1, 2, 0, living stubbornly within the smooth flow of phi. We enter Chapter 5, Topological Semantics, and begin with Part 21, Winding, Knots, and the Digital Core. This is where the holophase language reveals its skeleton. Beneath the flesh of continuous derivatives, there is a digital backbone, a structure of countable, stable things that cannot be smoothed away. Today, we learn how a continuous field like phi gives birth to the discrete, and why this is the secret to persistence and identity in a flowing world. We place this discovery in our Episode 7 journey by recognizing that we have already mapped the grand continuous architecture of the language, its alphabet, its nuance, its three great towers of space-time dynamics. Now we step into a new chapter. Topological semantics is not another tower. It is a different kind of branch that grows through and around all the others. It deals not with how much phi changes, but with how it wraps. Not with local slopes, but with global loops. This chapter reveals the discrete, stable core that allows the analog flux of phi to coalesce into lasting things. To feel this, imagine a smooth, sloping hillside. You can measure its steepness at any point, its derivative. And that steepness can be almost any value. A small angle, a steep angle, anything in between. It is analog and continuous. Now imagine you walk in a perfect circle around the hill summit. When you complete one full loop and you look at how much you have turned, you have rotated by one full turn. You can count that turn, once around. If you walk twice around, you would say 2 turns. This is already an integer. Now translate that intuition to phi. Phi is a cyclic field. Its value repeats every full turn, like an angle. If you take a closed loop in space, any loop, large or small, smooth or wobbly, and you track how many full cycles phi completes as you go around that loop, you will get an integer. 0, 1, -1, 2, and so on. This integer is called the winding number. It counts how many times phi is knotted or wound within that loop. It is a topological charge. From a field phi that can vary smoothly and continuously everywhere, we extract a number that can only be a whole integer. It is quantized. It is digital information embedded in an analog medium. Think of a spiral staircase. The height of each point on the staircase is analog. You can stand at any height along the rail. But if you count how many full turns the staircase makes from bottom to top, you get a discrete number. 1 turn, 2 turns, 3 turns. The winding is discrete. In the holophase language, these winding numbers, these topological charges, are the digital letters. They are the bits at the core of the system. They are stable, countable, and they form the basis for what we experience as persistent objects. In the Holophase language, topological semantics provides the stable nouns. Earlier, we saw the derivative structures in the temporal, spatial, and mixed towers, acting like adjectives and verbs, describing how things change, flow, and move. They are fluid, continuous descriptors. Topological charges, the winding numbers, behave more like nouns and proper names. They answer the question, what is it, in a fundamental, persistent sense. A vortex with winding number +1 is a specific kind of object, distinct from one with winding number -1 or +2. These digital letters have a crucial property: stability under smooth deformation. You can stretch, bend, or wiggle the phi field smoothly, and the winding number around the loop will not change. It is topologically protected. You would have to rip the field, creating a discontinuity or a singularity to change it. That makes topological charges ideal carriers of identity in a changing world. They can move, interact, and be dressed in various clothes of derivatives, different shapes, speeds, textures, but their core digital label remains, like a permanent ID number or an element symbol in chemistry. In the master tree, this forms a special branch, not a vertical tower of increasing derivative order, but a horizontal network of discrete states that connects to all levels of the derivative towers. It is the skeleton upon which the flesh of dynamics hangs. Operationally, winding numbers manifest as quantized circulation and as topological defects. To make this concrete, think about a vortex in a superfluid or a magnetic flux tube in a superconductor. In a superfluid, there is a quantum phase field, a cousin of r phi. The fluid flows with a velocity that is proportional to the gradient of this phase. If you take a tiny closed loop that goes around the vortex core and you walk once around that loop, the phase must increase by an integer multiple of a full cycle, so that when you return to your starting point, the value of the field matches. This integer is again the winding number. Because the velocity field is tied to the phase gradient, this winding number forces the circulation of the fluid, the line integral of velocity around the loop, to be quantized. It can only take values that are integer multiples of a fundamental unit, such as Planck's constant divided by mass. You cannot have half a quantum of circulation. At the center of that loop, where the loop shrinks to zero size, you encounter a special point where the phase is undefined. This is the vortex core. It is a topological defect. The winding number is not a property of that single point itself. It is a property of the loops that encircle it. The collection of such singular points, lines, or surfaces in space is what we call the sigma set, the defect set. Vortices, domain walls, flux tubes, and other such structures are the physical incarnations of the digital core. They are where the smooth analog phi field breaks down in a controlled singular way to host a discrete topological charge. Topological charges show their robustness in all three dimensions of our triunity. In time, a topological charge, such as the winding number of a vortex, is conserved under smooth time evolution. If phi evolves smoothly according to its equations of motion, you cannot suddenly create or destroy a single isolated +1 vortex out of nothing. You can only create or destroy them in pairs, a +1 and a -1 that appear together and can later annihilate, or through singular events that break smoothness. This gives topological defects a persistence through time that makes them very particle-like. In space, the charge is defined by integrating around loops or over surfaces. It is a global property of a region, not a local property of a single point. You have to walk around the defect to measure its charge. This makes it inherently non-local and shape-independent. A wobbly, irregular loop that goes around the defect counts the same winding as a perfect circle as long as both loops enclose the same core and you do not cross or exclude it. The measurement depends on who you encircle, not on the exact shape of your path. In motion, the defect core can move. As it moves through space, its topological charge moves with it. The path of the defect through spacetime is like the world line of a particle. When two opposite charged vortices meet, they can annihilate. The world lines join and end, and the total topological charge sums to zero. The history of these world lines, their births, encounters, and deaths, is the motion echo of topological semantics. Through this, the digital core provides a framework where something can have a stable identity in time, be located somewhere in space, and move, all while being fundamentally just a pattern in the phi field. In our episode 7 architecture, we are now exploring a foundational layer. Topological semantics is its own major branch in the master tree, parallel to the temporal, spatial, and mixed towers. It is deeply interconnected with them. The derivatives, especially spatial gradients and curls, are what you measure to detect topological charge. The dynamics of the mixed tower govern how defects move and interact, but the charges themselves sit at a more fundamental, discrete level. They act as boundary conditions and constraints that shape the possible smooth solutions of phi around them. This branch is the bridge between the purely continuous, field-based description and the world of countable, persistent entities. It is how stuff emerges from field. The digital core interacts with all continuous branches. Through spatial derivatives, particularly gradients and curls, topological charge can be computed. Around the vortex, for example, the gradient of phi has a swirling pattern. The topological charge is the integrated, global result of these local derivatives, obtained by tracing a loop around the core and summing the net phase change. Through the mixed tower, the equations of motion for phi determine how defects move. The force between two vortices depends on their topological charges and the medium's properties, which are encoded in mixed derivative terms. The topological structure also couples to wave semantics. Defects can scatter waves and imprint phase shifts on them. In quantum mechanics, the Aharonov-Bohm effect is a famous example, where a charged particle's wave function picks up a phase shift related to the winding of the electromagnetic potential, even though the particle travels through a region with no local field. This is a deep link between topology and interference. Later in the tree, when we discuss identity more explicitly, this digital core becomes the prerequisite. It is the seed from which stable objects and identities are built. The topological charges provide the stable hooks in the flowing river of derivatives. They are what the river flows around, what creates persistent eddies and structures. The semantic meaning of the digital core is that it is the dimension of being within becoming. The derivative branches describe the universe's verbs, all the ways things change, flow, and interact. The topological branch provides the nouns. It answers the question, what is it that is changing and flowing? It allows the holophase language to express existence. A non-zero charge exists here. And type. It is a +1 vortex and not a -1. It encodes conservation. What exists cannot be easily created from or destroyed into nothing. And counting. There are 3 vortices in this container, or 1 flux quantum in this ring. In the full language, it is the syntax of entity. It provides the grammatical subject for the sentences of dynamics. Without it, the language would only describe qualities and actions, but never the actors themselves. The defining feature of a topological charge is its stability under smooth transformations. You can push and pull on it, dress it in different field configurations, and as long as you do not tear the field or pass a defect through another, its integer value cannot change gradually. It is topologically protected. That is why quantized vortices in helium or flux quanta in superconductors are so robust and so cleanly measurable. They are not fragile features of a particular configuration. They are protected features of the entire topology. At the same time, while the charge itself is fixed, almost everything else can vary. The spatial configuration can be different. A +1 vortex can be fat or thin, isolated, or sitting in a regular lattice with many others. The dynamics can vary. Vortices can move slowly or rapidly. They can orbit, oscillate, or be pinned in place. Creation and annihilation are also possible. While a single charge cannot change smoothly, pairs of opposite charges can emerge from a smooth background when enough energy is pumped into the system and later annihilate, returning the field to a lower energy, simpler state. The digital core makes some of the most striking predictions in physics. Quantization. In any physical system described by a cyclic phi-like field, such as the order parameter in a superfluid, the wave function in a superconductor, or certain vector fields in condensed matter, the circulation or flux should be quantized. In superconductivity, you can measure the magnetic flux trapped in a superconducting ring. The prediction is that it can only be an integer multiple of a basic flux quantum. This is observed with extraordinary precision. In superfluidity, stirring superfluid helium leads to a vortex lattice whose total angular momentum is quantized. In the quantum Hall effect, the Hall conductance is quantized in units of e squared per hour, and this is explained by topological invariance of the electron wave functions in a magnetic field. A clear falsification of this digital core would be the reproducible observation of a truly continuous range of circulation or flux in systems that should be topological, contradicting the requirement of quantization. Instead, experiment after experiment has confirmed the discrete nature of these quantities. This digital core appears everywhere we find stable, countable entities. In physics, abricos of vortices in type II superconductors show magnetic field penetrating as discrete tubes of flux, each carrying a unit of topological charge. They arrange themselves in beautiful lattices that can be imaged and counted. Quantum vortices in superfluids and Bose-Einstein condensates are observed directly as tiny, stable whirlpools that move and interact but maintain their identity. Skyrmions in magnetic materials act like topological particles, promising for stable data storage because they are difficult to erase without a topological event. In some field theories, even elementary particles can be modeled as topological solitons, stable knots in the field with conserved charges. In chemistry, molecular knots and catenanes, interlocked rings, are literal topological objects at the molecular scale. Their knot type, or link type, is a discrete, stable property that survives many other chemical transformations. Chirality, the handedness of molecules, is another example. A molecule's left or right-handed version cannot be smoothly transformed into the other without breaking bonds, which is a kind of topological protection. In biology, DNA supercoiling is a classic topological phenomenon. The DNA double helix can be wound around itself, forming supercoils. The linking number, a topological invariant, describes this winding. Enzymes called topoisomerases change this number by temporarily cutting strands, passing them through each other, and resealing, a surgical topological operation that is essential for replication and transcription. Some proteins fold into knotted structures, and these knots can affect their stability and function, imposing topological constraints on their possible shapes. In earth science, atmospheric and oceanic vortices, hurricanes, tornadoes, large eddies in oceans, often exhibit a kind of topological stability. They maintain a coherent, rotating structure that persists for long periods, interacting with other flows but retaining a recognizable identity defined by circulation and vorticity. The logic of topological identity. Discrete, stable states within a continuum also shapes our abstract world. In consciousness and mind, while our stream of thought is fluid and continuous, the concepts and beliefs we hold feel like discrete attractors. Concepts such as justice or tree act like stable knots in semantic space. Many different sensory and emotional experiences can swirl around them, but the core idea remains identifiable. Changing a deeply held core belief often does not feel like a small adjustment. It feels like a rupture and reconfiguration, more like a topological transition than a gentle slide. Similarly, a persistent traumatic memory or intrusive pattern of thought can act like a defect in the mental field, a localized, stable pattern that is hard to smooth away and influences thoughts that circulate around it. In society and history, institutions and nations behave like topological objects. An institution's legal charter, constitution, or founding mission act as a kind of singularity in the social field, a fixed reference around which people, buildings, policies, and practices can change continuously. The institution's core identity persists until a revolution or dissolution event, which is a topological change in the social configuration. Social movements also crystallize around discrete cores: a slogan, a demand, a clear identity. Vague dissatisfaction is like a smooth gradient. It becomes powerful when it wraps around a simple, discrete core like independence or civil rights. That core gives the movement a topologically protected identity. In economics, currency itself is an example. A unit of currency, like a coin or a digital token, is a discrete unit of value in the economic field. Its identity as legal tender is protected by law and social agreement. Corporate entities similarly act as legal persons with discrete identities, registration numbers, charters, that persist even as staff, assets, and projects change. In knowledge and language, words and symbols are discrete entities in the space of meaning. The sound waves you hear when someone speaks are continuous, but your mind parses them into a sequence of words, each a stable symbol. The word tree remains the same word in your lexicon even if whispered, shouted, or spoken with different accents. Mathematical theorems are also topological in this sense. Once proven, they become stable landmarks in the landscape of knowledge. New work can flow around them, extend them, build upon them, but the theorem itself remains fixed. You can now start to see topological stability and discrete identity everywhere. When you notice a whirlpool in a draining sink or in a river, recognize that you are watching a topological defect in the velocity field. Its stubborn persistence, its reluctance to disappear without a more global disruption, is a sign of its topological nature. When you observe an old institution or company, notice how its name, legal structure, and core mission remain even as people and details change. That is a social topological charge. When you listen to someone speak, notice how your mind snaps the continuous sound into discrete words. The words are topological objects in your semantic field. You can feel this directly with a simple experiment. Take a length of string or a headphone cable and tie a simple knot in it. Then try to remove the knot without untying it or cutting the string, simply by sliding and deforming the string smoothly. You cannot. The knot is a topological defect in the one-dimensional string. Its knot type is a discrete, stable property. That is the digital core, in your hands, inside an analog medium. We return, as always, to the one field. These discrete charges, these winding numbers and knots, are still just configurations of phi. They are not new substances. They are specific global ways that phi's cyclic nature is wrapped around space. The miracle is that these wrappings can be counted with whole numbers. With this, our picture of the complete holophase language grows richer and more powerful. We now see that it has two complementary layers: an analog continuous layer, the infinite towers of derivatives describing all possible shades of change and form, and a digital discrete layer, the topological branch of winding numbers and defects that provides stable, countable identities. These two layers are intertwined. The digital core constrains and seeds the analog dynamics. The analog dynamics move, reshape, and sometimes create or annihilate the digital cores in pairs. Together, they form a complete language capable of describing both the fluidity of process and the persistence of object. This is the skeletal structure we were seeking. Our episode 7 goal, to see the entire language as a complete living tree, now includes this essential, robust backbone. As we conclude our introduction to the digital core, hold this beautiful duality in your mind. Within the infinite, flowing stream of phi and its derivatives, there are rocks, stable, countable integers around which the stream must flow. These rocks are not foreign. They are made of the same water, but structured by the logic of winding and enclosure. This topological layer is the universe's way of creating memory, identity, and stability from pure flux. It is the reason there are things that can be named, counted, and tracked through time, rather than just a continuous blur. In our next part, we will look more closely at the homes of these discrete charges. We will explore part 22, the sigma set, where meaning cannot be smoothed away. We will examine the specific points, lines, and surfaces where phi becomes singular, anchoring winding numbers to definite locations in space. We will map the skeleton's joints. For now, recognize this digital core within and around you. The beating of your heart is a rhythmic process described by temporal derivatives. But the fact that you are one countable being is a topological statement. You are a stable pattern in the field, a kind of knot in spacetime, with a persistence that mere flow cannot erase. You are an integer in the stream, and so is everything you love. Salam, and peace be upon you until part 22.